I never imagined it would happen this way. It was a typical Tuesday, and I was rummaging through Dad's office desk searching for the property tax bill. It was the same property tax that I'd been dutifully paying without a second thought. That's when I noticed it, a Chase Bank statement with my brother Nate's name. I really shouldn't have been snooping. I should have just located the tax bill and continued with my routine. But something compelled me to open that paper. And there it was, $423,500. It was a trust fund, my brother's trust fund. The room felt like it was spinning. The paper was shaking in my grip, not from the gentle air from the ceiling fan, but from the fury rising within me. For 6 long years, I'd been writing checks for my parents' mortgage. 6. Damn. Years. Property taxes, insurance, emergency roof repairs, and a new water heater, and the list went on and on. "Morgan, did you find it?" Mom's voice drifted up from downstairs. I didn't answer her and instead grabbed Dad's laptop. Thank goodness his password was still the family dog's name. Of course it was. I pulled up their banking records and my fingers flew across the keys. 6 years of statements, 6 years of my financial help. I got a legal pad and began adding everything up. When I was done, the number was staring back at me. $137,824.58. That's how much I had given them, while my brother was sitting on nearly $500,000 in an account. I made copies of every statement, every check image, and went downstairs, with the trust fund document on top of the stack. I saw Mom filling her coffee cup. Dad was engrossed with his iPad. Nate had his phone in hand with his legs resting on the table. "What is this?" I tossed the trust fund paperwork down between them. Mom's mug stopped as she was about to take a sip. Dad's expression became unreadable, that standard, professional look he used when he was dealing with business matters. "Where did you get that?" Dad inquired, keeping his tone carefully in check. "In your desk. That's where I was searching for the property tax information. You know, the one I've been taking care of for years." Nate eventually looked up from his phone. "Morgan." "Did you know about this?" I asked him, my words hitting the air sharply. "Did you all know while I've been using up all my savings to help this family out?" The quiet gave me my response. "Why does Nate have a trust fund, but I don't?" My voice felt odd to me, too quiet, too composed considering how angry I felt. "It's not simple, honey," Mom began to explain. "Explain it to me." Dad let out a breath. "Your grandfather established it, for Nate to one day take over the family business. The business that failed 8 years ago, that business." The silence was heavy. "And no one thought to use that money when you needed a new roof, or when you told me how the mortgage was late." Mom avoided my gaze. Dad just kept staring at his hands. Nate found his phone incredibly interesting. "Morgan, you've always been so competent, so self-sufficient," Mom said in a strained tone. I let out a harsh, unpleasant laugh. "So you chose to capitalize on that, to use me up while safeguarding his future." "That wasn't how we saw it," Dad explained. "Naturally." I rummaged through my bag and retrieved the check I'd made out for the property taxes this quarter, amounting to $3,200. I displayed it for them to see, met their gazes, and then shredded it into minuscule fragments that drifted down like icy flakes. "You can sort it out yourselves. I'm finished." As I left the house, my heart was racing, hammering against my chest so forcefully I thought it might break. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sensation that resembled freedom. That evening, I spread everything out on the floor of my apartment. Bank records, paid checks, text messages pleading for financial aid, electronic receipts, 6 years of being taken advantage of by the people who should have cared for me unconditionally. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. Mom, Dad, Nate. I silenced it and poured another glass of wine. By 3 in the morning, I had created spreadsheets, timelines, expense categories. The undeniable truth of my exploitation was laid out in neat lines and columns. The narrative they revealed made me feel ill. Once the sun rose, I called in sick to work and scheduled a meeting with Marion Chen, a financial advisor who my company had provided a seminar for last year. "This is quite comprehensive," Marion commented as she reviewed my spreadsheets 3 hours later. Her office had a scent of vanilla and sandalwood, but even those aromas couldn't cover up the unpleasantness of what she was looking at. "Is this normal?" I wondered if I was being overly sensitive about what my family was doing. Morgan, in my time as a financial professional spanning 2 decades, I've witnessed family financial manipulation in many forms. This perfectly fits the pattern. They exploited your achievements and eagerness to offer assistance. The affirmation felt like a physical shock. I wasn't delusional. I wasn't self-centered. I was someone who had been taken advantage of. What should I do moving forward? Marion moved closer. It depends on what you're hopping for. Are you seeking compensation, an apology, or simply to stop the cycle? Everything, my voice was steady. We need to gather all the evidence. I'll introduce you to a forensic accountant I know, someone who focuses on family finance disputes. Plus, and this is crucial, you also require emotional support. A therapist who understands the impact of financial betrayal. I departed Marion's office with a strategy and 2 recommendations. The accountant and a therapist, Dr. Patel, who focused on family dynamics. Later that night, my best friend Zoe arrived with dinner and some tequila. My brother has been texting me, she said, handing me some pad thai. He mentioned your dad is planning an urgent family meeting regarding your supposed abandonment issues. I almost choked on my food. No way. Classic gaslighting. They're trying to make it your fault now that they've been exposed. Zoe had always been wary of my family's requests for money. What's your next step? I'm gathering evidence, compiling the facts. Then, I plan to present everything to them and anyone else who's interested in hearing it. The final resort, Zoe lifted her glass. It's about time. In the following 3 weeks, I teamed up with Marion's forensic accountant, a woman named Eliza with an emotionless face who handled financial documents as if they were crime scenes. Dr. Patel guided me through the waves of guilt and manipulation my relatives utilized when their easy money flow suddenly ceased. Dad, Morgan, your mother is terribly upset, after everything we've given you. Mom, I don't get why you're punishing us. We've always backed your aspirations. Nate, you're destroying the family over money. How can you be so self-centered? Dr. Patel helped me understand these messages for what they were, attempts to protect their exploitative practices, to realize that their concern wasn't about losing me, but losing access to my finances. When I got the group text from Dad, announcing a family meeting to make amends at their lakeside home the upcoming weekend, I felt prepared. The lake house, the holiday place I had helped fund through taxes for many years, yet I'd never been invited to visit. It seemed appropriate. Are you certain you want to go through with this on your own? Zoe inquired the evening before, assisting me with organizing my presentation. I have to, but I'll call you afterward, I promise. I hardly closed my eyes that evening. I went over what I planned to say, foreseeing their defenses, the things they'd accuse me of, and their efforts to make me look like the bad guy. When the sun finally rose, I loaded my car with my evidence, my computer, and my determination, then drove north. The lake house looked precisely as I pictured from the pictures I'd seen, upscale but with a cozy feel, and those incredible views of the water. It was the kind of place where you'd picture happy memories, not a meeting to confront someone's betrayal. I arrived right at 2 p.m., 15 minutes after the meeting was supposed to commence. Let them experience some waiting for a change. I counted 5 vehicles in the driveway, more than I had anticipated. I knew Uncle Peter's SUV and Aunt Diane's Lexus. Wonderful. Dad had put together a panel. I adjusted my blazer, picked up my briefcase and computer, and walked in without bothering to knock. Why should I? I had funded the new door. The chatter in the living area stopped the moment I stepped inside. Mom, Dad, and Nate were seated on one side of the enormous farmhouse table. Across from them were Uncle Peter and Aunt Diane, Aunt Carol and her husband Steve, and my cousin Rachel. My father's expression hardened. You're tardy. Actually, I'm right on time for my own surprise, I responded. I placed my items at the head of the table. I see you've assembled the family to observe. What exactly? Morgan, we're concerned about you, Mom stated, her voice filled with practiced worry. This behavior cutting us off financially without notice. Without warning, I chuckled. I've been asking for support for fairness for 6 long years. It's not about the cash, my father interjected. It's all about the way you're behaving. Your sibling would never act this way towards us. My sibling, though, is sitting on $500,000 in a trust fund that you never mentioned to me. I observed the stunned expressions that spread across the faces of my aunts and uncle. But we'll get to that part. I switched on my laptop and hooked it up to the huge television affixed to the wall, a TV I helped pay for last holiday season. Since you've dragged the family here to pass judgment, I think they should hear the full story. The first slide flashed. Morgan Sullivans Financial Contributions 2018-2024. For anyone who isn't aware, I've been supporting my parents and indirectly my brother for 6 years. I started, and my voice was steadier than I thought it would be. At first, I didn't mind. I care about my family, but then I uncovered something that completely shifted my perspective. I carefully flipped through the slides, bank records, texts asking for money, the escalating demands over time, the deliberate exclusion from family getaways that were paid for by my help, and finally the trust fund. "This is a private family matter," my father cut in, his face turning red. "Your aunts and uncles don't need to know this." "Why not? You're the ones who brought them here to judge me. Shouldn't they understand what they're judging?" Aunt Diane leaned in. "James, is this really true? Morgan's been covering your mortgage payments. And also the property taxes on this lakeside home," I said. "A place I've never been invited to visit until today, when you needed people to watch me get publicly humiliated." A hush fell over the room, making me uneasy. I brought up the last spreadsheet. It displayed a comparison of my contributions versus Nate's, laid out side by side. The glaring disparity was clear. Over the past 6 years, I've contributed $137,824.58. Nate, on the other hand, gave nothing. Yet, he has access to a $423,500 trust fund, which none of you saw fit to disclose when you were asking me for financial assistance. Dad stood up quickly. "This is absurd. You're making it sound like we're wrongdoers for taking help from you, our daughter." "Not wrongdoers, just users." The word lingered in the silence. "You took advantage of me, Dad. All of you did. Then when I started to refuse, you tried to make me the issue." Mom started her tears, the ones that had worked on me repeatedly in the past. "We never intended to hurt you, Morgan. We're so proud of everything you've achieved." Proud enough to take advantage of it, not proud enough to acknowledge it. I shut my laptop. "That's all I have to say. Pass judgment if you wish, but at least have all the facts." Dad hurried out the back door, slamming it hard, so hard that the windows shook. Mom went after him, still weeping. Nate remained still, his gaze fixed on the table. As I gathered my belongings, Uncle Peter came up to me. "I truly had no clue, Morgan." His voice was low in shock. "We all assumed. Well, we were led to believe you were struggling with something." "The only struggle I was having was with my limits," I said, "and I'm taking care of that now." My family members, one after another, came up to me. They offered their regrets, posed questions, and awkwardly offered assistance. The whole meeting had completely blown up in their faces. As I headed toward my vehicle, Aunt Diane found me. "Honestly, I'm proud of you, not only for your achievements but also for defending yourself. That required a lot of bravery." I drove off from the lake house, and I felt better than I had in ages. The day of reckoning had arrived, and I made it through. For 3 glorious weeks, I heard nothing from my folks. There were no financial scares, no attempts to make me feel bad, no requests disguised as familial duties. My sleep started improving. I purchased a new couch without even considering how much it would affect my house payments. I began to recover. Then one rainy Wednesday night, my phone beeped with a message from Nate. "Can we get together? Just you and me, please." I almost didn't respond. However, my curiosity got the better of me. "Why?" His reply arrived almost instantly. "I need to speak with you, without Mom and Dad involved. Coffee tomorrow." We arranged to meet somewhere neutral, a coffee shop downtown, far away from my parents' area. I saw him right away when I stepped inside. He appeared altered, unkempt. The once bright image of perfection had significantly faded. "You look awful," I said, as I sat down in front of him. He tried to smile. "Yeah, well, things have been crazy." "I can imagine." The silence between us felt heavy as the barista brought our coffees. "I didn't know," he finally said, "about how much you were giving them." I was aware of the trust fund situation. He gave a slight nod. "I was aware of that piece, yes. Though I honestly don't know what I was thinking. I figured they were requesting small favors from you, not funding their entire way of life. So now what's the story? Now I understand everything. He raked his fingers through his hair. After you were gone, everything went crazy. Dad's been furious. Mom's putting on a performance like she's devastated, and the relatives have been constantly calling, wanting answers. That's not something I'm dealing with. I'm aware of that. I understand it's not. He leaned closer. But I want to fix something. I had a conversation with the bank regarding the trust fund. My defenses immediately went up. I don't want their money, Nate. It's not their money, it's mine, or potentially some of yours. He pushed a piece of paper towards me. I want to make you a 30% owner of the lake house. That's the only thing the trust money was actually used for, the initial payment. I just looked at him. Why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do, and because I never defended you. His voice wavered a little. I let them exploit you because it was more convenient for me. I'm sorry, Morgan. I really am incredibly sorry. I looked closely at his face, searching for any hidden motives. All I could see was the tiredness and sorrow. Dad's going to be furious, I said. A small smile appeared on Nate's face. He already is. I told him my plan last night. And I think the neighbors might have gotten the police involved if Mom hadn't calmed him down. Nate shrugged. But it's my trust fund, my choice. I stared at the paperwork in my hands. It was a legal document detailing the procedure for transferring the property. I spoke cautiously. This doesn't change the past. I understand. It isn't meant to. It's just a beginning, a way to even the score. I felt a kinship with my brother, something I hadn't felt in ages, not as the special one, but as someone also trying to escape the harmful cycles that we had both been stuck in. I'll consider it, I replied, putting the document into my bag. As we were heading out, Nate's phone vibrated a lot. He quickly looked at it, making a face. Dad, I asked, figuring it out. Who else? He wants to know what you said, if I somehow got you to see reason. And what are you going to tell him? Nate looked at me and there was something different in his gaze. Maybe it was respect. That you're making your own choices now, and so am I. In the weeks following, Nate and I had a few more get-togethers. Each meeting started to clear away feelings of anger and misinterpretation. I discovered that his golden boy label had its own drawbacks, immense pressures and love contingent on doing as he was told. Even with my dad's threats and my mom's emotional appeals, the lake house transfer went through. When they found they couldn't block it, they shifted their strategy, suddenly wanting to mend the family and move on as one. I didn't believe it. Surprisingly, neither did Nate. They haven't changed, he said during our walk around the lake at our now partially owned vacation home. They're just using a new method to get what they want. Power, finances, the convenient fiction that they'd done nothing amiss. He tossed a rock across the lake's surface. Dad proposed a family meal to make things better. I chuckled, make things better or empty my pockets. Precisely, Nate pivoted to look at me. But what if we went on our own terms? Like what? Unwavering terms. His face showed resolve. We show a united front. We dictate the rules for any future relationship together. The thought of having someone on my side in this struggle, particularly the one person I'd held a grudge against for ages, was both unusual and strangely reassuring. They'll try to split us up, I predicted. Let them attempt to. Nate's smile was stern. I'm finished being used. 2 days later, a lavish gift basket showed up at my place. Fancy chocolates, imported cheeses, premium wine. The note said, Family get-together, Vincenzo's, Saturday at 7. We miss you. Love, Mom and Dad. I sent Nate a picture via text. This bribe is getting costly. His reply made me burst out laughing. I got the exact same basket. Dad must have maxed out another card. For the first time in this whole mess, I didn't feel isolated. Vincenzo's was Dad's favorite place, where he wined and dined clients to impress them, where he knew the host personally. It wasn't a random selection. It was their home turf. Nate and I decided to meet an hour before the meal to coordinate our strategy. We sat in his car near the restaurant, putting the finishing touches on our plan. I reminded us, looking back over the plan, regardless of what they say or do, we're sticking to our strategy. We wouldn't have any side discussions, and we wouldn't let them try to split us up. Sounds good, Nate confirmed. He seemed unusually focused, more than I'd ever witnessed. And if they won't accept our stipulations, we leave as one unit. We arrived at Vincenzo's right on time, not a minute too soon or too late. Mom and Dad were already at their usual table, that secluded corner Dad always wanted because of the privacy and importance it provided. Mom rose and embraced us. I held it for a second before moving away. Dad stayed in his chair and gave a curt nod. "You look healthy, Morgan," Mom mentioned, examining everything about me from my hair to my footwear. "We've been so concerned." "There's no reason to be," I responded, sitting down. "I'm doing great." An awkward quiet descended as we requested our drinks. Dad coughed to clear his throat. "I believe we can all acknowledge that this has gotten out of control," he started, his professional voice present. "Some things were mentioned in the heat of the argument that we wish we hadn't." "Actually," Nate interjected, "Morgan and I have some ideas about how we can move forward." He gave me a look, signaling me to go on. I set a folder on the table. "We've put a lot of thought into this. These are our requirements if we're going to rebuild our connection." "Requirements?" Dad's eyebrows went up. "This isn't some kind of business deal, Morgan." "Isn't it? You've treated me as a business investment for ages, getting what you wanted without giving anything fair in return." My mother quickly put her hand up to her chest. "That's an awful thing to say. After all, we're your parents." I responded, "Just because you're our parents, that doesn't give you the right to use us financially." I grabbed the folder and pulled out a couple of papers that I had printed. "These documents show the boundaries we're setting from now on, the ones we won't budge on." My dad didn't even reach for the paper. "This is crazy." "Actually, it's really fair," Nate commented, keeping his voice even but resolute. "We've broken it down into 4 key points." I picked it up from there. First, we're completely separating our finances. Absolutely no more requests for money, whether it's a lot or a little. If you really run into trouble, we can talk about it, but it'll be with firm rules and payment plans, just like dealing with any other person you borrow from. My mom looked like she was about to cry. My dad's face got all tense. Second, Nate said, family therapy, all of us together with a professional who specializes in family and money issues. We'll do it for at least 6 months. We don't need therapy, my dad began to say. Third, I interrupted him, treating us the same way. Whatever you give to one of us, you give to both. Whatever you ask of one of us, you ask of both. No more playing favorites. We have never picked favorites, my mom insisted, but in a quiet voice. The trust fund tells a different story, Nate said. And finally, the 4th point, I finished. We need to admit to what happened. No more pretending. No more fibbing to the rest of the family about what happened and why. We want total honesty. My dad slammed his hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. This is absolutely unfair. We came here to fix things, not to be ordered around by our own kids. I stated, looking directly at him. Reconciliation demands responsibility, which is something you've consistently avoided. We provided you with everything, Mom sobbed, as tears began to stream down her face. Everything we owned, we gave to both of you. No, Nate murmured. You gave to me. You deprived Morgan. It's not the same. The waiter, picking up on the atmosphere, drew closer. Dad gestured him away. Is this your objective? Dad yelled, raising his voice. To shame us, to air our family's dirty laundry through counseling and family discussions. What we desire, I explained, is a positive relationship founded on mutual respect and truthfulness. That's the only way forward. And if we decline? Dad's question lingered unanswered. Then we leave, Nate stated plainly. Both of us permanently. The threat hit us like a physical impact. For the first time, I observed fear in my father's eyes, not fear of financial loss, but fear of losing control, of losing us. Mom reached for the paperwork with shaking hands. James, perhaps we should simply review what they're requesting. This is your doing, Dad accused me, turning your brother against us. No, Dad, Nate stated firmly. This is your doing, years of manipulation and playing favorites. Morgan didn't cause this, you did. The actual dinner never transpired. After an additional 30 minutes of repetitive arguments, finger-pointing, and eventually hesitant consideration, they took the documents home to consider them carefully. As Nate and I headed toward our vehicles, he exhaled deeply. Wow, that was a lot. Did we think it would be easy? Honestly, no. He paused for a second. Do you think they'll say yes? I gazed up at the night sky, which was surprisingly clear despite the city's glow. I have no idea, but for the first time I don't even care. I recognize my value now. I'm good with or without their okay. Nate agreed, nodding his head. Same here. We stayed there in the parking lot, two adults who had finally achieved the freedom to be themselves. Being at the lake house during the summer feels different now that I'm not an outsider. The sun shining through the trees, the soft sound of the water touching the dock. It all feels like it's mine now, at least to the degree of 30%. Half a year has gone by since that dinner at Vincenzo's. It's been 6 months of therapy, facing difficult truths, and repairing what was torn apart. Or maybe I'm constructing something entirely new out of the mess. Mom and Dad finally accepted our conditions, though not quickly or smoothly. The initial family therapy session was a complete mess. Dad walked out in the middle. The third session wasn't much better either. But by the time we had the sixth session, there was a change. Not a huge one and not perfect, but enough to count. Today marks our first family get-together at the lake house since everything changed. I'm watching from the deck as Nate assists Dad with the barbecue. Their actions are still a little off, their conversation hesitant, but they are present. My mom comes closer, holding 2 lemonades. Figured you might need a drink, she says, handing me one. Appreciate it. Saying thanks doesn't feel so awkward anymore. She settles next to me, keeping a thoughtful distance. A tiny yet meaningful acknowledgement of how things are now, with boundaries observed. The counselor thought I should say something to you, she starts, sounding a bit unsure. Something that's been hard for me to say. I simply wait, not pushing her or trying to stop her. I'm proud of you. It's not just your achievements, but how strong you are. She gazes out at the lake instead of looking directly at me. You challenged us when nobody else would have dared. You made us confront ourselves. It wasn't about being brave, I tell her. It was about making it through. She slowly nods. I get that now. I didn't before, but I do now. The quiet between us doesn't feel horrible anymore. Or at least, it's not filled with the usual tension. The Sullivan Women's Financial Independence Scholarship. It's a lovely concept, she says, shifting gears. Your dad and I were hopping to donate if that's all right. After everything that happened, I'd put some of the money I now had to help set up a small scholarship for young women stuck in families with money problems. It wasn't much, just enough to help one girl each year, but it felt important. That would be good, I say, taken aback by the offer. Thank you very much. Dinner's called by Nate, and the 4 of us convene on the deck, still figuring out how to be a family that's free of the problems we used to have. The discussion isn't always smooth sailing. Dad still occasionally falls back on his controlling ways. Mom sometimes withdraws into silent disapproval when she feels pushed. However, they are both putting in the effort. We all are. Once we're finished eating, Nate and I take a walk together along the water as the sun goes down. I had a meeting with my support group yesterday, he explains to me. He's part of a men's group focused on dismantling the habits of entitlement that we grew up with. I told them about the lake house, about our family. How did it go? It was good, more difficult than I thought it would be. He finds a rock and skips it across the surface of the water. One guy questioned whether I thought I should get the trust fund. I realized I'd never even thought about it. And now I believe that nobody is inherently entitled to a secure future while their sibling struggles. He glances at me. The trust is being closed next month. Half goes into your scholarship fund. I halt in my tracks. Nate, you don't have to. I want to. His smile is real. Plus, I've learned something from you, sis. Real security isn't about money. It's about valuing yourself and fighting for it. As we walk back to the house, I consider the financial realities. I contemplate the obligations that will never be truly wiped away, but perhaps can be forgiven. I think about the sacrifice it takes to escape and the importance of creating something better. My phone vibrates and it's a message from Zoe. How's this awful family weekend going? I glance around at the lakeside home, which is, in part, mine, where my parents are attempting, somewhat clunkily but sincerely, to be mindful of the new rules. My brother's changed into a friend instead of a competitor. I don't feel like a cash machine anymore. Instead, I feel like a human being who deserves unconditional affection. To be honest, I reply it's not completely dreadful. It's just complex, and that's acceptable. Some accounts will never be perfectly squared. Certain obligations will always linger. But I've discovered the real family balance sheet isn't based on finances. It's figured out by respect, by openness, and by having the nerve to need both. Based on that measure, I am, for the very first time, in a place where I can breathe.